Hello, my friends, and welcome. Now, as the title says, go ahead and pick a card if you've ever felt personally victimized by love. The timestamps are down below. Whenever you're ready, I'll catch you at your reading. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome to this reading, which is, well, the title of it is Pick a Card If You've Ever Felt Personally Victimized by Love. But it basically is a look at kind of wanting to look at the reasoning behind why we might have been victimized by love, why we might have been, if we've gone through something with love that makes us feel like we've been played or like we were given the short end of the stick, and we want to know why. Before I continue, let me just say that as a disclaimer, this is an online general reading. With these online general readings, and honestly with any tarot reading, even if it's a personal one, don't allow for me or any tarot reader to create any truths for you. If what I'm saying doesn't at all have to do with what you are going through or have gone through, don't try to make it fit. That what I'm saying that doesn't apply to you for this reading that you've picked is for someone else who picked this reading. Don't worry about it. It's really not that serious. Last thing for disclaimer is that this is for entertainment purposes, and what that means is kind of like that first bit where don't allow for me to make truths for you, don't allow for me to make decisions for you. None of this reading is about decision making, but even so, if something that I'm saying as an example or just anything that comes off, nothing that I'm saying is a suggestion or advice. This is only meant to confirm, and this is true for any tarot reading, should only really be confirming what you already know. And this should really be physical proof, as physical as an online video can be, of what you already know. So if anything that I say isn't something you already inherently know or is being confirmed to you, like, okay, yeah, that makes complete sense, then just leave it. That's not for you. All of that being said, let's get into this reading. Now, this first, we have two tarot decks and then the oracle deck that I'm using. The first tarot deck up here is answering the question of what it is that you went through, what you are referring to when it is that you're saying you have been victimized by love. So what happened, basically. The second tarot deck down here is answering the question of why that happened, why love felt the need to victimize you, per se. What was the reasoning behind that lesson that you were basically being put through, that tribulation, if it's not a lesson? And on the left, we have, with the oracle deck, answering the question of who you were before this happened, what love was seeing you as, that love felt the need to put you through this. And over here on the right, what the desired result was with this lesson and tribulation, whatever it is that it is, whatever the case is, sorry. So the short answer of it, if you're not going to sit for all of this reading, is that you have, this could be true now or it could have been true in the past, again, whatever's true for you, you could have been or are currently in a situation where you're with someone, but you're not really with them. So there's definitely a sense of there being some semblance of stability with this person, but it's not something that it is visible to people. So this is going to range differently for all of you. This could be on one end of the spectrum, you know, you're with someone who doesn't want to go public for whatever reason. They don't want it to be something that people know about. Everything has to be hush hush. Everything has to be kind of like sneaking around. But the feelings that you guys have, like you guys go on dates and the talks are really good and the chemistry's there. Everything feels good. Everything feels right. But there's that really big but of it cannot be public. It cannot be official, or it cannot be like this thing that you get to actually depend on as a relationship. Somewhere in that spectrum that I'm talking about of situations, it could be like if it's like a queer relationship, an LGBTQ relationship where maybe one of you isn't out, and so to be with this person, everything's good, everything's great, you really like this person, but because they aren't out or you aren't, it can't be made public. So again, there's this, that's basically what happened. These three cards up here are basically describing this situation where there is some semblance of stability, maybe even some sense of security with this person, but it is not official. It is not something that like is known, and whether it's known to other people or like just known between the two of you, it's real and it's there, at least in your eyes, but it's not tangible. It's not something that, again, you can really rely upon. Why this happened is because you needed to learn that, one, you have a lot of love to give. And not only do you have a lot of love to give, you also, aside from that wonderful, huge love that you have to give, you also have this inherent, this great inherent capacity to take on a lot, to withstand a lot, to be, you can carry a lot of weight. Whatever the reasonings for that is, there is a bit of an indication here in the cards that there's a heavy past, whether it's in love or just in general in your life. You've had a really rough past, and that has basically left you with this great capacity to carry these great weights, because you've grown accustomed to carrying great weights. And so this lethal wombo combo of having a lot of love and affection to give while also being able to handle and take a lot really leaves you vulnerable to these situations where there is someone who can give you the amount of affection and love that you require, while also not fully giving you that whole 100% of like, yeah, we're official, or yeah, people can know about it, or whatever the case is, that restriction that exists. And so why this happened is that you needed to understand those things about yourself, and that just because you have a lot of love to give and you have the inherent capacity to put in the work to make a relationship function, that doesn't necessarily mean that the person you're giving those things to is the right person to give those things to, and B, that they're receptive to those things, that they're compatible to the things that you have to offer. And so that's, again, the short version of it. A situation where there is a lot of chemistry, a genuine connection, but it's not 100%. It's not something reliable and stable. And this had to happen because you needed to understand about yourself, your capacity for love and your capacity to put in work to make something, a relationship, function. But you had to experience these things, you know, giving great love and putting in the work in a relationship with someone who couldn't reciprocate that energy, so that you could see that, you know, you having a great heart doesn't mean that you're only going to attract good people. I don't know what good allegory I could you know, if we have like, I'm using a lot of plant metaphors lately, but anyways, a fruit tree, okay? If you see a fruit tree and you can obviously tell that there's this one huge, juicy, plump, let's say it's a peach tree, a juicy peach, And all of the other ones are kind of like, they look okay, but they're not as big. They don't look as juicy, as good as this one that's really popping out to you. Anyone else who sees that, the same thing that you're seeing, is going to reach for that juicy, good looking one. And so that's like, just because you're the great, juicy, plump peach on the tree doesn't mean that only the deserving is gonna look at you and be like, I want that. No, if you are attractive, I'm not talking about physically attractive here. That could be true too. But like, if you are someone who has something great, like great affection and a lot of willingness to put in a lot of work, that's attractive to especially people who aren't willing to put those things in. And so that, you're going to attract pretty much everything. It's not, you having a good heart doesn't inherently protect you from people who would use those things, what you have to offer, to their advantage. And that's what you had to see. You've had to experience things with people who you had to see cannot accept what it is that you have to give, so that you understand that exists, that there are, that you actually, it's not that, I was going to say that there are people who just aren't compatible with you, but it's not so much that. It's more specifically that you are it's almost like you're an acquired taste. And that's not to say that you don't taste good, or that, I know I'm kind of switching allegories because you were a juicy peach just now. But my point being that you aren't just for just because you're that great, juicy, plump peach doesn't mean that you're for everybody. So that doesn't mean that you just make yourself accessible to anybody or whoever comes in and gives you what it is that you require. You have the right to reserve yourself and what it is that you offer for someone who impresses you, for someone who genuinely not only can reciprocate what you have to give, but can surprise you as much as you can surprise your partner. So, okay, why am I getting those messages? We start with, at the front and center, the 7 of Spears, which with this deck, the Alice in Wonderland deck, this is the 7 of Swords. And the Alice in Wonderland deck is a pip deck. It doesn't have like images for the minors. It just has like what it actually is. So 7 spears, we see 7 spears. And despite that, I noticed that this one card is flanked by 2 flowers cards, wands cards. That is the first thing I noticed. But the second thing what came to mind was the specific image for the 7 of Swords. And the imagery in the 7 of Swords, originated by Pamela Coleman Smith, depicts what looks like a thief. It'll always depend on the context of the reading. It's not necessarily always a thief, but it kind of looks like a thief because he looks like he's sneaking around and he's carrying all of these swords, and it looks like there's a camp, like a military camp behind him somewhat. And so this idea of stealth and sneaking around, but attached to that stealth and sneaking around, a bit of a tinge of treachery. So that whole thing of the relationship being something that is on the down low, is something that's hush, is that you have to sneak around. And if it's not so much that, it's something that cannot be known, that has to be carefully maneuvered with and by, whatever that is for you guys. The 6 of Wands reversed, the 6 of Wands upwards is victory, it's success. So then this card that's about success and victory being reversed, it's not having those things. On the other side is the 4 of Wands upwards, and the 4 of Wands traditionally is about a stable fire between 2 people, mostly, but not always between 2 people, but because of the context of this reading, I'm getting it that way. So a stable fire between 2 people. In the Pamela Coleman Smith imagery, it shows what looks like the 4 posts of an awning that looks like it's going to be for it looks like a celebration happening because of the 4 posts and like a wreath of flowers on it. A lot of times it's associated with a wedding reception, or like a wedding where the couple goes and they say their vows. I don't know what that's up front, where they go and they're in front of the person who's officiating, whatever that's called. That's what the four wands kind of look like in that card. And so that idea of stability, of structure, something being created that you can then build something upon. So what is upwards is, yes, this stable structure that something can be built upon. But what's also upwards is the Seven of Swords, which is all about, that sneakiness, that lack of full acknowledgement. And what really drove point that home of, yes, the stability's there, but it's not enough for it to be like stable and secure, is that the card of stability and security, the Four of Wands, is the smallest number here, because we have the Seven of Swords and the reversed Six of Wands. So yeah, there's a passion, there's a fire and the chemistry that exists between you and this person, but that's it. That's as much as exists there. And that's very likely why this person isn't willing to give you more, because that's all that really, at least for them, it might be true for you too, and you're not really fully aware of it, where there's nothing beyond just something. If it's not physical, then just like chemistry. And no, chemistry is not enough to build a stable relationship upon, believe it or not. So that's what these three cards were saying up here. Down here, we have the Ace of Cups reversed, which again, answering the question of why this happened. The Ace of Cups upwards is a boundless, limitless heart, a heart that has no limitations. And when intimacy is achieved successfully, the heart is it's given free range, basically. And so that's what the Ace of Cups upwards would be this overflowing heart that's given free range because it feels safe to do so. Reversed, then, it's all of that. It's that heart and the love it has to offer being restricted and being contained, repressed, basically. What's interesting, before I continue, is that we have the very first card of the Cups suit, the Ace, and the last card of the Cups suit, the King. And I'll get to that in a second, but between them is the Ten of Wands. And the Ten of Wands is inherently about what I was saying earlier, that huge capacity that you have to carry heavy weights. The way that you just can take on things and just do it, basically. The King of Cups is here to me depicting your partner, this person that you have been or are in a situation with. That it's the King of Cups does not mean that this is a masculine person. This is just what they're being represented as, because the King of Cups is, yes, the master of emotions because he's the King of Cups, but he's an isolated master of emotions. He is, in order to maintain an to remain emotionally unbiased, he remains detached and away from other people, other influences, so that his emotions can run through unfiltered and untainted by other people's influences. So here we have you being represented by these first two cards, this repressed cup, this repressed heart that, can't fully express itself because of the conditions of the situation. You in the Ten of Wands carrying the weight of not being able to express yourself, but wanting this relationship to work so bad that you're putting on all of this work to just basically breaking your back to stifle yourself and your needs and also maintain things to keep this person happy. And the King of Cups here basically benefiting from all of your works, and that's why it's the King of Cups, while basically being turned away from you and again detached, uninfluenced, and untainted by you and your work. So before I continue, let me just say that I have been there, and that really fucking sucks, and you do not deserve that. Nobody does. But that's the thing about having a lot of love to give, is kind of like that message, that little metaphor that I was giving of like, when you are attractive, you're going to pull in the worst very often. And if you haven't learned how to deal with the worst, you either learn or you're gonna get kind of sucked under it. But the thing is that you're here at a tarot reading, which means that you are in some way, shape, or form willing to honor the truth that lies inside of you, your intuition. So congratulations, because that means that you haven't been willing to stay in situations like this, and you're now, if you haven't already started the journey towards something better, then you're willing to get yourself there, to move away from this that has been true up until now, or it has been true in the past, and to create something better for yourself. So let me just, congratulate you for that, give you a quick virtual hug, and let's continue. Who you were before this. We have Strawberry Battlefield. If you haven't watched Steven Universe, that's what these images are from. Don't worry if you haven't watched it. You don't need to have watched it. I'm interpreting them. If you have, cool. Hey, hope you like these. So the thing with Strawberry Battlefield is that, like, it sounds cute, right? Strawberry Battlefield, but it's still a battlefield, so there's a dark history there. What came to mind as an idea with this card, in a way of describing you, is that you have, yes, a dark history. Again, like I said earlier, whether with love or in life in general, but you wear it well. You make it presentable, and that's either because you hide it entirely, because it's not presentable, because it takes away from the overall image that you have going for yourself, so you just tuck that away, or you wear it in a way, you display it in a way that compliments you, whatever that means. That could be that you just make small of it by making jokes about it, or you're very comfortable just expressing your traumas while never really working your way through them or the feelings around them. You flaunt around your triggers and you impress people with how well articulated you might be with how well you know yourself, but that's as far as it goes. It's all just for presentation, or at least it has been in the past. Or, if that's not necessarily true, then there's just, you have that tendency to either oversimplify or make small of your wounds, your pain, whether in this specific situation or just with your general pain, with general things that you just want to hide, instead of acknowledging the dark truth that's there. With Peridot, she goes through huge character development, but before she starts on that journey, she's very far up the ass of her overlords and has drank the Kool-Aid all her life. I mean, that's where she grew up, that's what she was created by, so if that's all you've known, that's what you're going to stand by. But when she starts to learn that there is more outside of what she's been taught, that curiosity, that inherent curiosity that she has, leads her naturally towards this path of not just good, but again, that character progression. And it's not that she does it by herself. She's, has friends and people who are very patient with her and willing to teach her. But the point being that there are a lot of us on this planet who can recognize we're unhappy with our lives and situations, but are unwilling to look at the truth at the root of that situation, which is very often ourselves. And instead of accepting that blame, or whatever blame is at the root of whatever we find wrong, we'd rather just ignore it and never accept that truth and just live in misery. Peridot and you aren't like that. You have recognized that something is wrong, and although it has been difficult to accept those things and accept the work necessary to get yourself away and from this place, you're willing to do it. And that, again, is the demonstration of this heavy weight that you have this inherent capacity to carry. Amazing. Chaps, which is just a bag of chips. What came to mind was all that in a bag of chips. So kind of how with Strawberry Battlefield, you're making pretty of something that really shouldn't be pretty. Not so much that idea with chips, but what I got from it was in this relationship or in these situations, or just in general, You go above and beyond. You, again, break your back to be all that in a bag of chips. So maybe in order to be all that in a bag of chips, in order to be the best partner, the most attractive person, the most desirable, you strawberry battlefield, you either hide your flaws or you wear them in a way that like beautifies them, makes them more palatable to other people, as opposed to honoring them in a way that's healthy to you. And you do so because you're trying to be all that in a bag of chips. You're trying to be alluring and wanted. And at the root of those things, even though those things are true, there is within you this acknowledgement that what you've been doing isn't making you happy. And because you have that awareness, you also have an inherent capacity to be guided, whether by yourself or your intuition, and whatever the case is, be guided from this place that you've been operating in to something more elevated, to a situation that's better than what you've currently had, what you've had up until now. The desired result, we have Fry Shop, which isn't from, oh yes, it is from Divinimation. Fry Shop, Pink Dimension, and Onion. Fry Shop it's a communal space, so it's public, it's available to pretty much anybody in town. Pink Dimension isn't. Pink Dimension is only accessible by the main character, and in the past was accessible by his mother when she existed. So it's very few people, or gems, whatever the case, characters who can get into this space. In fact, we only ever see the main character and one other character within this space. So, oh, well, no, there's been more, huh? Well, 3 or 4. The point being, it's not as accessible as Fry Shop, but both are here. And I'll get to that in a second. Onion is just this weird character. He's just really off-putting, but we learn that even though he's very unique, he has very genuine friendship to offer. He's just a kid he's very genuine. And yes, he's weird, but just because he's weird doesn't make him bad. Not that I'm saying those things that are true about you, but what I'm getting from these 3 cards is that the desired result with all of this is that you were trying to be shown that there is a time and space for everything that you have to offer. That you have so much love to give. And paired with that huge love and affection that you have to give, paired with that inherent capacity to work really hard and carry a lot of weight, you are doing a disservice to the world by limiting that love and affection and all that work to one relationship. In fact, to try to give this relationship to someone who isn't willing to accept it, when there's an entire world that needs that type of affection and love. And if it's not the world, then like a community, the people around you, your friends, your family, there's other avenues for you to pour yourself into, but you refuse, and you're just, no, it's just for my loved one, or it's just for the things that I want. And it might not be that you hold it consciously like that. It might not be that you're like actually saying those things, but the truth of the matter is that you had to, part of the desired outcome is that for you to understand that love and romance isn't the only avenue for you to pour yourself into, and that there are in fact plenty of opportunities around you, plenty of avenues for you to pour yourself and your love and affection and all of that hard work that you can do into, and that will benefit greatly. Not only will whatever you're pouring yourself into benefit from you pouring yourself into it, you will also benefit from pouring yourself into this, because you'll learn again that there are other places to pour yourself into. And honestly, when those beautiful things that you have to offer are put into the right place that can be well appreciated, that's a different kind of high. Yes, having a romantic love that can be reciprocated to the degree that we put it out is a remarkable high, of course, but to find that there are other ways to benefit from that thing that we have to offer is also fantastic. And that's what's being said here by Fry Shop and Pink Dimension. Pink Dimension is saying that yes, it is great and fantastic for you to pursue an intimate avenue, a more exclusive avenue for you to pour your love and affection into, basically an exclusive relationship. That's okay for you to want those things, but that desire, in fact, that relationship will greatly benefit from you taking some of the weight from those expectations that you have from that romance and that relationship. Because when you pour some of that love and affection somewhere else, and you aren't, like, it's kind of like investing your money, right? Whether you're familiar with that or not. Let's say you like, it's basically like you're having two, forget that investing thing, you have two revenues of income, because you're pouring it into like a more communal space, and you're also pouring it, in this hypothetical, to a romantic space, because you're outputting your love and affection and yourself and your hard work into these avenues in a healthy way. You will then have this incoming reciprocated love and affection and work towards you coming from two spaces, as opposed to it all coming from one, and this one avenue being overcrowded, kind of like weighed down by all of what you're offering. And again, so you get what I'm saying? Like you can relieve the expectations from romance and that kind of love if you start to pour your love and affection into other avenues. And it doesn't necessarily have to be communal. If you are like a complete introvert, or if the idea of like pouring yourself into like people or a space isn't really hitting your vibe, this could very well be like art, or just something that you're doing by yourself, but that is going to be for the reception of other people. So if it's not art, like a business, or just something that you're creating that's for the world. The point being that there are other avenues outside of romantic love that exist for you to pour yourself into. And Onion was giving me that message of you being an acquired taste. And it's not that you aren't the peach that everyone is attracted to, because it's like, yeah, this person can do the work, they're a good partner, I want that. But like, you're gonna have to start making people prove to you that they are worth what you have to offer. What came to mind with Onion is that there's this episode, and it's the episode where we find out more about this really weird character, because he never talks, and any interaction that he has with the main character is always just like weird, because he's just a weird little kid. And in this episode, we finally go over to his house and we find out where he lives, and he makes the main character crawl through the vents in the house, and like he's weirded out because like, what the hell's going on? This weird kid is making me crawl through like the walls in his house. And in the end, after all these creepy things that this weird little kid makes the main character go through, he takes him to like this inner sanctum inside the house that has no doors, and it's just like lights, and it's really pretty and serene and quiet. And in this secret, intimate space, Onion gives the main character a toy, and there's a significance to that toy. But the point is that in this intimate space, he had to show the main character, Onion had to show the main character his weirdness. He had to kind of scare him a little bit to show, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't this deep in the episode, but in the context of this reading, just go with me. It was kind of like Onion had to show the main character how weird he is, so that Onion could see, are you going to run away? Are you going to be like everybody else who can't handle my weirdness? Or are you going to be an actual friend who can sit here with me in my weirdness and love me anyway, and offer your friendship to me, your love to me anyway? And the main character does, because that's just who he is, and is rewarded for it. And the reward being, when someone can, and it's not that you're weird and someone has to withstand your weirdness. You could be. That could very well be why Onion's coming out here. But more so what I'm getting is that you have to make sure that your partner is someone worth you giving your particular beautiful brand of love and hard work to. Not everybody is worth that, because not everybody is going to do those things. Not everybody on this planet has the capacity for love that you do. Not everybody on this planet has the capacity or the willingness or the motivation to put in work into a relationship the way that you do. And putting yourself with your beauty and all of these wonderful things that you have to offer in a situation with someone so much less than you, it's not just a disservice to the world, it's a disservice to you. And so the desired outcome is moving from a space of, I have to be the best, I have to be all that in a bag of chips, I have to be desired, I have to be wanted, and moving to a space of, I am wanted, everything that I have is desirable, and it's up to me to dispense it in a wise way, in a healthy way, and not just healthy to the people that I'm dispensing my love to, in a way that's healthy to me. I'm tired. This is a good reading. Okay, the last 3 cards, the last advice from Venus, from love. We have house, tree, and book. Okay, so there's like a specific side to these 3 cards and what they're saying. If that's true, cool, take it. If not, forget about it. And then the second interpretation is more general, and that's definitely for all of you. The first interpretation that might not be for all of you, and that's very specific, is that you got to get your house in order. So that could be literal, where like you need to work on your space, the space that you live in. It could be that it's messy. It could be that, you know, maybe you need to like do some energetic cleansing. I don't know what the case is. You need to get your house in order. It could, if it's not like your house, your living space, it could be like get your affairs in order. Like, you know, maybe there's some things that you have been off-putting because of like your disappointment, your heartbreak, and whatever's going on. Or the point is, whatever is a mess, whatever is out of place, whatever isn't, or rather, what's taking away from your stability needs to be addressed immediately. Because that chaos, that disorder is standing in the way of something that you're trying to grow. Whether it's that business that I'm talking about, or your art, or just you. It could very well be just the you that's trying to emerge from all of these lessons. The mess, the disorder that is in your life, and the disorder that I'm talking about is outside of this situation that we're talking about, the disappointment in love and everything that we talked about. That could be one of the things that is part of that disorder, but the disorder is definitely like outside of that. In addition to that, what we're talking about. And all of those things are stifling some type of growth. There is definitely something that you, in addition to those things, to you getting your house in order and creating the proper circumstances for something to grow, there's something that you need to learn. Whether it's the lessons that are being given here or something specific that you've been wanting to learn, this is a confirmation from the universe, from love. Get real on that. Like get serious about learning that thing. So if you've been thinking about, like, you know, if this is like a business thing, like if you have a small business and I don't know, let's say you bake cakes and you haven't, there's like this really cool technique you've seen some people do on social media and you're like, oh, I've got to learn that technique, but you don't get around to it. Learn it now. There's something about something that you want to learn that will be of great benefit to you and to the things that you're trying to grow, whether that's you or whatever it is. So that's the specific message that's coming through for all of you. You are the house. And yeah, that still applies of getting your house in order. So yeah, getting yourself in order. But house is our base of operations. And so what I'm getting from the house card is you, your energy, your autonomy, your resources, time, money, etc. Energy. So time, money, energy, etc., your resources, what it is that you have to dispense. So it could also be your love and affection and all of your hard work, you, right? So your the house card is you and your resources. Tree is if you and your resources are soil. Tree is what could grow from you and your resources. So you and your resources are potential. Tree is talking about what could grow in that potential. So what these 2 cards are saying is that all of that, I've been complimenting you about that great big love that you have to offer and all of that hard work that you can do. All of that, that's that your potential, that beauty that you have within you, that strength, that power, that magic, that's just the foundation. That's the floor of your capacities. You're being led to a point where you can then use your potential and your capacities, you, as a starting point for what it is that you're meant to grow. So if you think where you're at now is incredible and magical and powerful, hun, no, not at all. It's almost like I almost have to laugh at you for thinking that where you're at now is your ultimate form. It is not. Where, like, what you can do is, that's the base, that's the ground, that's first level 0, even not even first level. And you are soil that you are being asked to like nurture and make great for what you are being asked to grow, for what's being planted in you, or that you're meant to plant in order to grow something eventually. And book is saying that it's still that whole learning thing where you can't fully see right now what it is that I'm talking about you being that potential and ground zero for this great thing that's going to grow. You're not meant to see that. You're not meant to see that fully. You're not meant to see what it is that you're meant to grow. You're not even really meant to have a full grasp or awareness of your strength and power. But you learning and becoming aware of those things is part of that magic. I hope that makes sense. I think of like a hobby or just something really difficult that you've learned in the past, and how on day one of you learning this thing, it all felt so impossible and difficult and like, I'm never going to learn this. And after some time and dedication and doing it, if it eventually kind of became second nature, and if not just second nature, then it just became doable. That's what book is saying, is that you're going through this process where it's okay that you're freaked out and that you can't fully see what's happening. You're definitely not meant to, because despite your great capacity, you haven't fully reached yet the levels that you can reach, and that at which point, once you reach those levels, you'll understand what it is that's going on now. I that's as best as I can word it. But okay, so that's what I have for you. Pile 1, to just kind of bullet point through what we went through, what it is that you went through, or what it is that you've gone through, is being put into situations where you have something quote unquote stable with someone, but it's not actually secure, and it's not something that you can write home about. It's not something that you can depend upon, despite how much chemistry or whatever it is that exists there that you're holding on to it. Why this happened is because you had to become aware of the great capacity of love and affection that you have inherently, and how willing you are to just put in the work to make things work, even though they aren't meant to be working or functional. And you've been put in these situations with people who do benefit from the work that you put in, but who can't reciprocate back to you what you're putting in. And why this happened was because you needed to see that just because you have a good heart and a lot of love to give doesn't mean that undeserving people won't come and collect. Why this happened is because you had to learn that there is a time and space. You had to learn how to dispense yourself and what it is that you have to offer in a more healthy way. That there are other avenues besides romance and love for you to pour yourself into, and that you would greatly benefit from pouring yourself into other avenues, and those avenues would also greatly benefit from you pouring yourself into them. There is also something about making sure that your partner is someone worthy of what it is that you have to offer, and that another reason for why these things happened was because of how you were acting in the past, where you were going above and beyond to be palatable, to be more wanted, more alluring, desired by your partner. And you may have gone as far as hiding your flaws, if not wearing them in a way that was attractive, more palatable to your partners. And you had to really see how the way that you had been doing things wasn't the best way for you to do things. My friend, I hope that this helped. I hope that this message had something for you. Again, lots of hugs. And let me wish you Godspeed with everything that you've got going for you, this great potential that you carry. You are so worthy of everything that you have to offer. So please make sure that you're giving it yourself and what you have to offer to the right people and to the right places. All of my love. Bye. Hello, my friends, and welcome to this reading. I don't really know what to call it because I know that it's pick a card if you've felt personally victimized by love. But I guess, yeah, that's the title, right? If you've ever felt personally victimized by love, if you've ever felt like you've been slighted by love or, just wronged by love in any way, that's kind of the purpose of this reading. Some disclaimers before we begin. The first of which is, do not allow for me to make up truths for you. This is a general online reading, and so there's only so much that can be true for you. And with really any tarot reading, it should only be a confirmation of what you already internally know, whether consciously or not. And what I mean by that is nothing in a tarot reading should feel brand new. If anything, it should feel like a confirmation of hints you've been feeling nagged towards, or things you've been hearing time and time again as like kind of synchronicity from the universe or life or whatever you believe in. The point is, if something that I say isn't true for you, don't make the assumption that I'm picking up on something you don't know about. That can happen in a tarot reading, but for the most part, the way that I read, it's more so about confirmation for your internal guidance system. I don't know why I worded it that way. Internal guidance system makes it sound like internal GPS, but I meant your intuition. You get what I'm saying. Second disclaimer is that none of this is advice. I'm not a life coach. I am no type of professional who you should be seeking advice from. Your decisions are yours to make. Don't place that responsibility on a random stranger online. So just with that in mind, let us get started on this reading, which is, again, for if you've felt wronged by love. Now, this first half with the top row of tarot cards, it answers the question of what happened, what it is that went down for you to feel like you were wronged by love. Definitely meant to be a confirmation that you've picked the right pile. The second row of tarot is answering the question of why that happened. What was the reasoning behind divinity, behind the love, making things go down this way? And I don't want to say making things go down, but it's like, what was the reasoning behind this happening? To elaborate on that, on the left, the oracle cards are answering the question of who you were before all of this went down. That the universe, love, divinity, whatever you believe in, whatever you're guided by, what they saw, who they saw you as, that needed to go through this in order to change. And on the other side, it's the desired outcome. What was divinity, love, the universe hoping for you to become, for you to gain through this process? At the end, I'll interpret these later, the 3 Lenormand cards, which is just final advice from love to you at this time. We'll get to those in a second, or, after this interpretation. What happened? Actually, before I get to elaborating on each of the parts, the long and the short of it, if you're not going to watch this entire reading, is that you had a lot, and then very specific things out of your control happened in your life, and all of those things that you had, that abundance that you were benefiting from, sitting pretty in, all of that kind of got swept away, or it changed to the point where now you're struggling. So it's vague on purpose because it's a general reading and it's going to be different for all of you. But that's what the top row is saying. That's what I'm being told happened for you to feel victimized by love. And because it's victimized by love, it could very well be that you might have had a lot of options in love. And if it's not that you had a lot of different options in love and romance, it could be that you had a lot of that pouring in, or a lot of potential for that to come in. And through circumstances of life out of your control, those things are not available to you anymore, or as accessible to you for whatever reason. And there's a struggle attached to your current circumstance to sharply contrast what existed before those changes. So there really being a sense of comfort and a lot that you're benefiting from in the past, that, you know, was really good for you, and then something happening with the Wheel of Fortune, and that's out of your control, and you here being now at the Seven of Wands, struggling to maintain your position. Why that happened is because you weren't, or rather you were taking for granted what you had. This abundance that you were benefiting from, it kind of almost bored you. You were so used to it that you just kind of coasted along, enjoying the benefits of it without ever really realizing what it was that you had. So there was definitely a misuse of the blessings that were being made available to you. There's definitely a sense of, over here on the left side, with who you were before. So okay, it's gonna be different, but for one portion of you, half of you, it's gonna be that you were very popular, you like to get around, however that is for you, like whether it was just flirtation and you liked, you know, to flirt with as many people as possible, regardless of how committed you were to a specific person or specific people, for my polyamorous people out there. And if it's not that you were very popular and getting around like that, and before I get to that, sorry, on the other end of the spectrum, if it's like one end of the spectrum is just like flirting, the other one, the other extreme end of the spectrum is by, obviously, or if not so obviously, physical promiscuity, to keep it PG. And they're definitely, okay, so, and if it's not that you were that type of popular, then that being about, like, if you had that coming from like one person, or from, you had wherever that abundance, that comfort was coming from, it was either really known, like it was so well known that you had this, that like people just kind of connected that abundance to your identity. So it could be like you were called spoiled because of how loved you were. Or it was just like, oh, that relationship that pile 2 is in, like we all know about it because it's so like good, you know, it's such a blessing for them. So something along those lines, something about it being known, and if it's your abundance that is known, then it's you who's very well known. And at the root of that, there being this justification that you give yourself for why you do these things. And there definitely being a sense of you feeling justified in doing these things because of what has transpired in your life or in the past, or whatever the case is. There's something about you definitely feeling completely justified in your actions. The desired result, what love, what divinity, whatever you believe in, was hoping for you in putting you through this, and you going through this, they wanted you to stop being so messy. Because we have 2 cards here that are all about organization, and cleanliness, and keeping track of things. So where in the past you were kind of just doing whatever you wanted without any consideration or thought for consequences, the point of it was for you to become aware of the consequences of those actions and just how far it ripples out, so that you can be more careful and you can stop doing things in a way that creates consequences you're trying to avoid, and being really careful to keep track of what it is that you're doing and how it's impacting people, to whatever degree it is that you're doing that to. And definitely a sense of there being a contrast between who you either are right now or are becoming, and then this past that we're talking about where you did things in the way that you did things. So the hope being you becoming someone new, being rebirthed into a new cycle where all of this is in the past, and it's not that you've forgotten and it's not attached to you, it's that you've learned from that past and you are applying what you've learned to not repeat those mistakes, basically. Why am I getting those things? Well, we start with the Seven of Cups. And the Seven of Cups here is coming through as all of those options that I'm talking about. Cups are about emotions, the heart space. And in a love reading, that's where I was getting where each of these cups could represent, all of those options that we were talking about available to you. And if it's not like different romantic options available, then just that abundance of romance and affection that was available to you in the past. The Wheel of Fortune is anything out of our control, but specifically the changes, the course of life that continues to go on, regardless of how we feel about it. Reversed, it takes then on a negative kind of tone, a change that impacts us in a negative way. So here we start with abundance, and then there's this change that impacts us in a negative way, and we're moving from the Seven of Cups to now the Seven of Wands. So shifting from the emotional space into the more spiritual inner fire space. And just through the imagery, the figure in the Seven of Cups looks very serene and calm. And I mean, she's in this dreamscape with all these options. So it's kind of like she's dreaming and comfortable. And on the other side, we have this masculine figure who's seemingly struggling to maintain his position, like I said before. But I mean, he's taken his shirt off to stay on top of here, and we can't see if anybody's holding these wands that he's trying to like push down and like kind of parry off. But the point is that what was coming through in my mind, the phrasing, if you're familiar with it, it was a meme a while ago where it was like, my hands look like this, so hers can look like this. And it was this whole of like men. It started as a trend of like men posting their rough hands through their, the manual labor that they do. And then so hers hands can look like this, and then her hands are all manicured and pretty, and so that contrast of working hard and what that looks like on someone, and then leisure and comfort and how that looks like on someone. And so you moving from a place of being taken care of to now you're just struggling to take care of yourself because that thing that you were relying and comfortable in isn't available to you anymore. And so from an emotional space of the heart space where, you're comfortable emotionally to a space of inner fire where you're having to make use of your inner fire and or your spirituality, like you're kind of relying on your faith a little bit because of what you're going through, because you don't have the comfort that you had access to before. To move into why this was happening, where you were taking for granted what was available to you. The Queen of Wands upwards, she's hot. This is someone who's very attractive. So you're being represented here as whether it's that you were physically attractive or not. What the Queen of Wands upwards is representing is this you in this energy, where as Queen energy, abundant, comfortable, magnetic, and that's who you were. You were sitting pretty in all of this comfort and again, this Seven of Cups energy. But then reversed, it's when it's upwards, the Queen of Wands energy talks about someone who utilizes her resources, your resources, to not only your benefit, but to like everyone's benefit, because she's a monarch. So something for the greater good, and if it's not for like other people, then just the greater good for yourself. And so that contrast of working hard and what that looks like on someone, and then leisure and comfort and how that looks like on someone. And so you moving from a place of being taken care of to now you're just struggling to take care of yourself because that thing that you were relying and comfortable in isn't available to you anymore. The Queen of Wands energy talks about someone who's, you know, utilizes her resources, your resources, to not only your benefit, but to like everyone's benefit, because she's a monarch. So something for the greater good, and if it's not for like other people, then just the greater good for yourself. The point being that when it's upwards, these energies are abiding by elevated, honorable intentions. Where reversed, it's more selfish and self-indulgent. And so the comfort is being referenced by the Queen of Wands. The reversal is a reference to you taking that for granted and you not really recognizing what it was that you had. What you were being given at this time, we return to the Cups suit, the Ten of Cups, the complete spectrum of emotion. Well, that's usually those are the words that I use to define the Ten of Cups. But what I'm seeing it here as is, you see how there's a family depicted here? I don't know whether or not you have an actual family, like if you're a parent. That's not really so much what I'm picking up with this card, but what I'm getting from the family being depicted here is kind of like how okay. I don't know what movies you've seen or shows you've seen, but I'm sure in something you've watched or read in some type of narrative, there's that trope where man or woman, doesn't really matter, but they're married and they are dissatisfied with that humdrum life. And so they go out and explore and they risk this humdrum life, whether through an affair or just whatever the case is. It doesn't always have to be an affair. They put their family, this comfortable life at risk to be self-indulgent. And through, by the end of the story, they recognize what they really had, whether it's too late or not. And that's what I'm getting from the Ten of Cups, where you have this comfortable thing at home within your grasp that you have access to. And yet you're the Queen of Wands. You're not present in that space of happiness and comfort and abundance. You'd rather be somewhere else, the Queen of Wands reversed. You'd rather apply yourself and your energy in newer places that excite you, rather than the comfort of what it is that you were being given. And we move into the Four of Cups, which to me is a reference to your capacity for emotion versus what you're being given. So what you're being given is the Ten of Cups, the most amount of emotional matter, but what you're capable of is the Four. So at this time, why this happened is because you were being given all of this abundance, but you had no way to really appreciate it. And so in order for this abundance and these blessings to continue to come, or for them to come back, you really needed to, or you need to, learn how to recognize those blessings. And not only be satisfied with them, but to be grateful for them and to know how to maintain those blessings. And that can't happen until you learn how to recognize those things. Moving into who you were before, that whole popular thing the whole popular thing coming from Freischott, because one of the words is popular. And it's just a staple place in the show that these cards are from. Something that's easily accessible and, again, popular. Like it's almost like a tourist attraction. So there being that sense to you where you were easily available and kind of, a tourist attraction, however true that is. And so again, whether that's true in the sense of like you got around, whether, however true that is, or you just, what you had was very known, was very popular to people. Romance novel, it's called a romance novel, but it's meant to be like an erotic novel. So that right there in the center, giving that tinge of what we were talking about, where, it feels like physical promiscuity, but if it isn't that, it's okay. Let's do that first interpretation, and then we'll go with that second interpretation. The first interpretation being that you were popular around town. And if we're sticking to that interpretation, then romance novel is confirming that this was more than just friendly banter. Like if it was you just flirting and it never went past that, then you really pushed the limits with flirtation, to the point where you kind of like either left people flustered or really confused. Like it was never just about fun flirtations where it's like, oh, making fun small talk with someone, to where like it's enjoyable. You might have been a little intense and taken it to a point where it's like, wait, whoa, what's going on? And Sadie, alter ego, and it also says hard, because she is a hard worker, where I was getting that interpretation of you how you justified this behavior, where it's either like, oh well, I work really hard in my life, or I've had a really hard life, whatever the case is. You feel comfortable slipping into this space where you're doing these things, or you feel comfortable doing these things where you are benefiting and not really recognizing what's there in front of you. Moving into the desired outcome, Pearl says proper, precise, devoted, and the voice recorder down here says organized, reminder, outdated. But I'm not really paying attention to the outdated part. Voice recorder just brought to mind like a journal, because that's kind of what it's used for in the show. And we journal to keep track of what's happening in our lives. To whatever degree we journal. Like some of us journal like our physical, what's going on, like actually happening, like, oh, today I went to work and then I had lunch and that was it. And other people, like myself, we journal more internal things, like what we're feeling. And I like to journal about the astrological transits and what I'm experiencing through them and things like that. The point being that voice recorder is where I was getting that interpretation of you really being careful of what it is that you're doing, keeping track of what you're doing, how you're interacting with people, and being aware of your actions and what you're doing, because in the past you weren't aware of those things and you have now seen the consequences of that. And so to avoid those things, you're now more careful. You're keeping track of the things that you're doing, of keeping track of yourself to whatever degree that is, in order, again, to avoid the mistakes of the past. And Pearl, with proper, precise, and devoted, we're moving from this place of being like messy and inconsiderate, now careful, now proper, now, because she's always cleaning something and she's very systemic and never makes a mistake. And if she does, she will go and correct it and make sure that it never happens again. So both of these cards really pushing home that idea that the desired outcome was for you to stop being messy, like I said, and for you to be more aware and careful of how you are operating. I am realizing that I never continued with the second interpretation for this first bit of who you were before. So we talked about the first interpretation of if you were popular around town, but if it's the second interpretation of if that's not true, and it's either that what you had was very known, or it could just be popular in the sense that it's just an abundance of attention. So you just had an abundance of attention from one person, or just so again, it doesn't necessarily have to be that it's you were physically known by a lot of people. It could just be that you had a lot of affection from one person and that's what made you popular. And so if we're following that strand, that interpretation, romance novel, mature, star-crossed, and the last word being embarrassing, but I'm not really picking that one up. One interpretation I'm getting from that is that you may or may not have used physical stuff. It's YouTube, so I have to be careful with how I word things, but you get what I'm saying. Adult stuff as a means to get what you wanted from people. Not people, sorry, but from that relationship. And if it's not that you used it to get what you wanted, it might have been that you felt that giving this person who was giving you all of this affection and attention, you felt like it was an adequate exchange for them to give you all of that and for you to only give them something physical. That's what I'm getting from romance novel, those two interpretations, whichever one's true for you. Say the interpretation remains the same as the first, where you are justifying it through whatever means that you feel you're justifying doing those things. Whether it's because people have actually called you out, or the people that you've been involved with have called you out, whatever the case is, or even if they haven't and you just like churn it over in your head, that's how you justified it. That it's either that you've had a rough life or you have a rough life, you work really hard and so you get to play really hard, whatever the case is, you definitely feel or felt justified in the way that you operated in the past. Okay, going back to the desired outcome, like I said, the desired outcome was for you to stop being so messy, for you to be more aware of how you were moving, and basically just to be more careful. The center card, Fright House, Lighthouse, it reads former protector, retribution stands tall. If I'm not mistaken, because I don't think I talked about it, but the deck that I'm using, the Oracle deck, it's called the Divinimation deck. And basically the creator created a deck using different cartoons, and then either by location, character, or item. And oh my god, hold on. And I'm realizing that on both sides we got one of each. Character, location, and an item. Neat. And so I only got 2 expansion packs for 2 specific shows, the Steven Universe and Scooby-Doo ones, because those are the only 2 cartoons that he's done so far that I'm like into. And it doesn't really matter that if you have watched those or not, because I'm the one interpreting them and getting these messages for you. But why I'm telling you this is because the Fright House Lighthouse is a Scooby-Doo card. And in the episode that this is from, they go to visit this lighthouse. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a minute since I've watched the OG Scooby-Doo show that these are from. But if I'm not mistaken, the dude that is attached to this lighthouse, the ghost that, he's trying to take revenge on the people's boats because like he had a boat and for whatever reason, like he couldn't fish where all of these other people were coming, or I don't know. The point is he was trying to get people away. So that's where that retribution was coming from, where it's like something happened in the past, and as a result of that thing that happened, you're now doing something about it. That's what I'm picking up from this card. Not so much the specifics of like you getting revenge or anything like that, just so much that acknowledgement of there's something that's happening and I have to do something about it. Former protector, kind of coming from that idea that a lighthouse is meant to protect ships from ramming onto land during a storm. Former being the fact that I think in this episode, it's no longer an active lighthouse. It's kind of just abandoned. Former is what I'm getting that interpretation of, like there being an acknowledgement of what existed in the past, but that no longer being true in the present. So in the past, this lighthouse was functional and doing its job, but now it's not doing that anymore. In the past, you were doing the most, and now you're not. Stands tall. There being I don't know if this is like you already know this and you already experiencing this, and if it's not that you're experiencing this, you're definitely being advised to do this. Don't be ashamed of any of this. I don't know if you've hurt people, and if you have, you might want to check out my Love Crimes reading. I've only done one so far, but I am going to repeat it, and there might be something for you there, because that reading is specifically about if we've hurt people and we know that we have and we're ready to do some work there. But the point is that the desired outcome is not for you to be ashamed of any of this or for you to pretend like it's not there. Stand tall. Honor the fact that this is who you were, but this is who you are now. Or this is who you're becoming, if you're in the process of that. So, that's what we have with this first bit. Before I continue to this last part, which is the advice, the last bit of, the advice that love has for you at this moment. Let's just take a moment to acknowledge and congratulate you for the fact that you aren't you haven't been defeated by what has happened to you, by this victimization, by you being moved from a place of abundance and comfort to where you're at now, where you're struggling, however true that might be, in whatever way that might be true for you. Because some people they just blame the world, or they blame others, and they never do the work on themselves. But here you are at a tarot reading, to some degree honoring your intuition, and that is a clear demonstration of your desire to become, or to do better, to elevate yourself. And that's what I want to take a moment to acknowledge and congratulate you for, because sure, you may have acted a way in the past. None of us on this planet are perfect. The person that you think is flawless very likely has their own skeletons in their own closet. My point being, I'm not trying to take away from anyone. It's just that, like, we owe ourselves more grace. Because I feel like we're so used to just throwing ourselves under the bus, and sometimes that's called for. Sometimes being accountable means throwing ourselves under the bus because, we've done some stupid shit. The point being that with that, we should also temper that with, like, the grace that we're willing to change, the grace that we have become aware of what we've done wrong, and we don't want to do that anymore. And that's what I want to take a moment for here. So, virtual hug. Let's take a breath. I'm going to take a quick little drink, and then we will continue with the last part of this reading. Okay, 2 things that I'm getting in terms of advice. One could be true, both could be true. The first interpretation is that if there is communication with someone, whether romantic or not, doesn't really matter, communication with someone or with people that isn't healthy to you and is in fact in some way, shape, or form hurtful to you, that needs to stop, that needs to end. That's a part of the cycles that you're moving out of. And in order to really accept the new cycles that you're moving into and the new person that you're becoming, it really is about ending communication, ending ties with anyone, any groups that you are starting to recognize you have no business in, because it's not healthy for you, because it hurts you. Now, if that's not true, then we move into the second interpretation, where you need to put an end to the internal communication that is unhealthy to you. Basically, stop being so damn mean to yourself. Going back to what I just said about you owe yourself more grace. Now, sure, you've done the most in the past. That doesn't mean you're the worst person on the world who deserves to be punished and you're not undeserving of good things in love. You're here because you're acknowledging you've done something wrong, and to some degree, you're willing to put the work in. Now, that isn't true for all of you. Some of us are just going to click off this reading and not do anything about it and continue to go into those lessons until we're forced to acknowledge those things, and then we're going to see what happens. But there are some of us tuning in where we are ready, and all of this is confirmation, and it feels good to know that the work we've been putting in is being acknowledged by the universe. Whatever the case is, wherever you are at, put an end to communication that is hurting you, whether that is from other people or from yourself. Surround yourself instead with more positive communication, again, with whether that's with other people or yourself. Because that hurtful communication, whether external or internal, is a part of the old cycles that are ending. These new cycles and the new person that you're becoming requires positive communication, external and or internal. I really hope that this helped. Real quick, internal hugs. Or what am I saying? Internal hugs. Virtual hugs. Godspeed, my friend. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye. All right. Hello, pile 3, and welcome to this reading where we're looking into why you've been personally victimized by love. Now, before I begin, I do want to give a couple of disclaimers. The first of which is that I cannot make up any truths about you. You should not allow any tarot reader to make up any truths about you. In fact, any tarot reading should only be a confirmation of what you already know, however conscious that awareness is. yes, a tarot reading can reveal certain things that we are blind to or neglecting to fully accept. But if anything that is said during an, especially a general online tarot reading, but any tarot reading really, if anything that's said just isn't true, then don't allow for us as tarot readers to create that truth for you. The task then falls to you to determine what that card is reflecting for you. And it's our job as reader, well, it's my job as a reader in that moment, and this would really only be happening in a live reading, you know, a personal reading, where it would be my job to then help you maneuver through that and help you determine what we're talking about. But in a general online reading, I try to give the best examples that I can to help you determine that for yourself. The second disclaimer is that I cannot give you any advice. I am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not any of those people that are licensed and have the capacity to give you sound advice for what to do with your life. I am a stranger on the internet. You should not be trusting me to make any decisions for you. Again, anything that should be coming through during these readings should be things that you already know. And if it is something that's being revealed to you, it's being revealed to you because it's true. And you're like, yes, that makes sense. So that's it. It shouldn't be that like, yes, this tarot reading it's going to make the decision for me. And whatever this tarot reading tells me is what I'm going to do. No, I can only, as a tarot reader, I can only help you to get into the right mind space to make that decision, but I cannot make that decision for you. These things being said, let's now get into, you've picked your card. Now let's get into why you've been personally victimized. But before we get into the why, what happened? And that's what this first part of the reading up here with the tarot cards is. The first tarot portion is answering the question of what happened for you to feel, or that, is why you're here. What happened for you to feel victimized by love? The second part down here, and this first part is really meant to be a confirmation that you've picked the right pile. The second portion with tarot is answering the question of why that happened. What love saw in you that, what was the reasoning behind this trial, this tribulation, this lesson that love orchestrated for you to go through. On the left here with the Oracle deck, and I'll elaborate on the Oracle deck itself when I get to it. But on the left side, we have answering the question of who you were before all of this happened, that love saw needed a change. And over here on the right side, we have what the desired outcome was for love with you going through this. What love was hoping for you would happen as you went through this and maneuvered through this. So, what happened? What's interesting is that I was only getting 3 cards for each of these readings, but when I was shuffling your cards, these two stuck together, and it was almost unnoticeable until I put the card down and I kind of felt the difference in like thickness of it. And when I pushed it, I saw that there was a second card under there, and I wanted to put one back, and I took a second to really pay attention to my intuition, to be guided to what to do. And I was guided to put them like this, where the Hanged Man is above the Empress. A couple of things that I want to point out before I get to the specific messages is that the 2 cards that decided to stick together are 2 majors, and everything around it is minors. And I'll get to that in a second. I digress, but I do want to point that out before I get into the rest of it, because it's just remarkable that 2 cards came out. I'm usually pretty good about feeling, because these are pretty thick cards already, so it's usually pretty noticeable when I've grabbed more than one. I don't know, you were obviously meant to have these 2 cards. But okay, what happened? We start front and center before she's interrupted by the Hanged Man. Let me just put the Hanged Man off to the side. The Empress is you, to whatever degree, empowered. It could be empowered to the point where you don't really have to do much for things to go your way, or it could be at the other end of the spectrum where you are very capable of going out there and creating your own way. So regardless of how much effort you're putting in, your way being created, your will being manifested. And there being the sense before the Hanged Man comes in of comfort within this empowerment, whatever that means in your case. So to give some mundane examples, it could be that in the past you were in a position of power where you were sitting comfortable above other people. It could be like a position at work. It could be like a position in a family, whatever, or in a friend group, or maybe just within a specific relationship. There was definitely in the past a point where your will, what you wanted, was being done, regardless of that comfort and all of that comfort that you were benefiting from. Outside of it, just outside of that comfort, was the truth that it wasn't super sustainable what you had going on. And if that's not true, then it's that there was things just outside this comfort zone of yours that were waiting for you to address them, for you to acknowledge them, because they require your attention. And that's what the Hanged Man is. Because when the Hanged Man is upwards, he's upside down. And so the Hanged Man upwards is about that shifted perspective. And what I love about the Hanged Man is that I interpret the Hanged Man as he can see the reversals upwards. And he is flanked by two reversals. And so to accept the role of the Hanged Man, meaning this warped perspective upside down, is to acknowledge the blockages in your life. And so what I'm getting from the Hanged Man reversed on top of the Empress, kind of blocking the Empress, is that that reality just outside your comfort zone that was waiting for you to address it, your intuition, you were internally being guided to address those things. But you were rejecting that new perspective. And so the Hanged Man, which when it's upwards is us accepting this new perspective. When the Hanged Man is reversed, it's us rejecting a new perspective, likely for the comfort that you were benefiting from. But the truth remained that outside of this comfort zone, things weren't very good. And so to go back to the state of being where you're at the Empress and you're empowered and your will is being done. In that state of being, the Five of Pentacles is reversed. And the Five of Pentacles reversed, to put it plainly in the way that I'm getting it in the context of your reading, is sanctuary. Accessible sanctuary. And so that I'm attaching that to that space, that comfort zone that I'm seeing in the Empress. It was kind of like a sanctuary, but the thing about sanctuary is that it's there because outside of that sanctuary is hostility. On the other side, we have the Queen of Cups reversed. And the Queen of Cups is someone who can alchemize emotional matter. They can turn something really terrible and they know how to transmute that into something positive. That's not to say that, they can just turn their sadness into happiness. That's not what the Queen of Cups upwards is about. It's just more so that she has the emotional intelligence and maturity and wisdom to know that all emotions pass, and so sadness can be held, but it's not going to be the only thing that occupies us. And so reversed, it's a failure to alchemize what's coming up. What I'm seeing it as, the Queen of Cups reversed is a failure to self-regulate emotionally. And so because you can't regulate emotionally, or you didn't have that know-how yet, you opted to stay within this sanctuary, this zone of comfort zone, Lord. And you rejected this new position that was you were being guided towards, again, in favor of that comfort. Now, this is technically a love reading. And it's about like being victimized in love, like you feeling wronged by love. Now, to give it that context of romance, two things coming up. One interpretation is that you were choosing something and maintaining it out of convenience to you because it was easily accessible, even though it wasn't the best thing for you to engage in. So kind of like, hooking up with someone you really shouldn't be hooking up with, either because there's other people involved, or because, maybe this isn't the greatest person and, it's just, but it's convenient, so you do it, but you shouldn't, kind of a deal, whatever the case is. There being a sense of you doing and sticking to something because of convenience, and that not really being the greatest thing for you, and that being that truth that you're rejecting, that it's not the best thing for you. You shouldn't really be engaging with this, but it's convenient and it's within your comfort zone and within your reach, so you just engage with it. And so you're kind of stuck in that state of only getting the small amount that you're settling for. But I'm skipping ahead to this portion here of like who you were before, and I haven't gotten into the why this happened. And sorry, I forgot that I was talking about the two interpretations of where the first bit is you engaging physically with someone you shouldn't. And if it's not that, it's that you feel like you've been wronged by love when in fact you've never ventured or risked anything to gain it. And you stay within your little comfort zone where no one can hurt you, and yet complain that love has like slighted you. So two very separate camps here, but in online general reading, this is what happens. So, okay. To kind of bullet point the first part here of what happened is you stuck to your comfort zone, and you have missed out on you stuck to your comfort zone because there are harsh truths outside of it that are difficult to accept, but that you have been called to accept in order to progress to something better. And because you've neglected to accept this new perspective and this elevation that you're being called to, you are being relegated to stay in the cycle of scarcity where you're only going to get as much as you settle for. Camp A is where you're engaging physically with someone you really shouldn't be for whatever reason. Camp B is you never venturing outside of your comfort zone to get love or romance and affection, and yet feel slighted by love in that way. Why is this happening? If you're part of that second camp, it should be pretty obvious why you're being quote unquote slighted by love. It's because you're not venturing anything. It's because you're maintaining your comfort zone and avoiding any type of conflict. And the thing is, the expectation that all matters of your life should only be positive experiences is such a privileged approach to life that that's all I'm going to say about that. Like, it's just delusional and not at all conducive to any type of healthy. And I don't mean for this to like all of a sudden turn into a lashing for you, but if you can see the truth of you not leaving your comfort zone and therefore you're not gaining anything, you can handle this truth that, of course, nothing's going to happen if you don't create it. Now, if you're part of that first camp, and if you're part of that second camp, there's still advice for you. Stick around. Sorry to be like lashy, I don't intend to be that way, but it's just, no, I'm channeling, so that's coming through. Whatever, you can take it. Anyways, stick around. There's more for you. If you're part of that first camp, why it had to happen, very clearly, kind of what I'm saying, you're maintaining something that you know isn't right for you. The Six of Swords is a quiet movement. Like moving quietly, because this person's moving these two figures and they're hooded, and it's kind of following that idea of refuge, of moving from one place into something safer, that I was kind of getting with the Sanctuary card with the Five of Pentacles here. But the Six of Swords is where I'm getting that idea of movement shrouded in darkness. So something that you're engaging in, something that you can only engage in darkness. The Four of Pentacles is holding onto something, grasping and clinging onto it regardless of what it costs you. And so, you holding on to this thing you're not supposed to be doing. I mean, that's why you're doing it in the darkness. And regardless of how it makes you feel that you're doing this thing, you're not supposed to be doing, you're maintaining it for whatever reason. Maybe out of habit. Maybe because it's maybe a little bit of an addiction kind of a thing. Whatever the case is, you holding and grasping onto this thing, and while acknowledging that it's not something you can do, in full acknowledgement of everybody. The Five of Wands is conflict. Not necessarily that you are in conflict with other people, but what I was kind of getting from it, I wasn't getting anything specific so much as the energy of like hookup culture, because there's all of these people with wands, and wands are sexual energy, and they're all engaging with each other with their wands. So like engaging with each other with their sexual energy. So it's not necessarily that you were promiscuous or that your partner was. That could be true. But I was just more so getting that energy where it's like, it's not something between just two people and it's committed, or if it's a polyamorous thing, just between the people, specific people involved in that relationship, but rather something that's casual. Like they're just, it's nothing serious. They're just like, it's like a little scrimmage kind of a thing. No one's actually hurt. No one's actually like angry or anything. It doesn't seem that serious. So just, that's what I was getting from the Five of Wands, that there's just this casual energy to what you're engaging in. Now, it could be that what the Five of Wands is picking up on is how this thing that you're engaging in could only stay casual, which is where I was kind of getting that interpretation of maybe there's other people involved, like you had to move in darkness and there was other people involved, and that's why this is something that you couldn't do in the daylight, in full acknowledgement of other people, but you're grasping onto it again because of what we talked about. Likely again, if not because of habit or addiction or whatever the case is, it could very well be just because of convenience, because it's within your comfort zone. So who were you, or who are you now, that love saw or sees needs a change? Now, the oracle deck that I'm using here is called the Divinimation deck, and the creator made this deck out of cartoons. And the original deck comes with like a whole different variety of cartoons, and then he created expansion packs. And I only have the expansion packs for Steven Universe and Scooby-Doo. It doesn't matter if you've seen these shows or not, because I'm the one interpreting these messages for you, and I'm a big fan of these shows. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of context for each of like these cards and their meanings, so you can understand what I'm getting, why I'm getting what I'm getting from them. Now, romance novel is definitely meant to be like an erotic novel, mature, star-crossed, embarrassing. So all of those things kind of coming across as what I was talking about. Mature being that kind of like hookup culture or just casual thing that I was talking about. Star-crossed, where this wasn't something that could flourish into something healthy. Embarrassing, something you don't want people to know about. Big Donut is a donut shop. I mean, it reads hangout deserted staple, but I'm not looking at the keywords for this one so much as I'm paying attention how in the show, the main character lives at the beach house, and the closest thing to his home is the Big Donut. So that idea of proximity and convenience, where it's within your comfort zone. Like, he's so often at the Big Donut because it's convenient. It's right there next to him and he wants a donut, so he's just gonna go get a snack. And so that's where I was getting that idea of just sticking to your comfort zone. And that this is where we converge back to the two camps. Whether it's that you've been engaging in something you know you shouldn't have, or you just haven't left your comfort zone to find love. The Big Donut represents your comfort zone, Beach House represents you, and romance novel represents either the casualness of what you're engaging in, the star-crossed embarrassing aspect of it, or if it's that it's you're sticking to your comfort zone, can't be, where you're sticking to your comfort zone and not moving out of it to find love. Romance novel is representing what exists outside of your comfort zone, that you can't get within your comfort zone. So that erotic, mature stuff. And if it doesn't necessarily have to be like erotic or that you're looking for sex or anything. It's just love. That's being represented by romance, the romance novel here. The desired outcome. We have Shaggy, Pink, Diamonds, Zoo, and Onion. Really weird stuff. But what I'm getting from these cards, the desired outcome. One thing in common about all three of these cards is that there is a sense, there's a theme of courage attached to each of them. Shaggy, because he is notoriously cowardly, and very often, every episode he has to be given a Scooby snack in order to be bait or do whatever courageous thing he needs to do in order to solve the mystery. And so, although Shaggy is cowardly, because that's an aspect to his character, the opposite is so often used as like a narrative point. And so he's as cowardly as he is also often demonstrating courage. Pink Diamond's Zoo is a spaceship where at some point in the story, the main character's dad is taken to, and he's being kept prisoner there, basically. And so the main character has to venture into enemy territory to rescue his dad. So that takes courage. And Onion is this really weird character who freaks the main character out at the beginning. But there's this episode where we go to this weird character's house and the main character isn't super comfortable, and he kind of has to trust his courage, basically, to follow this weird kid around his house and be led through all these weird experiences, only to at the end be rewarded for sticking to that weirdness and, being rewarded for that courage that he displayed with this weird character's friendship. And after that episode, we see this character in a new light. We don't see him as weird. We start to understand why he's quiet and weird, and not understand it fully, but the point being that there's a difference in tone after we've had the courage to get to know this weird character. So courage, to some degree, being demonstrated in each of these cards is what I want to talk about, is what I'm really picking up on. But to get into the specifics of the desired outcome, Shaggy is definitely giving me a sense of chilling, you needing to relax. And I'm getting that from how Shaggy is meant to be a stereotype for a pothead. I'm definitely not saying that you have to pick up weed, but I am definitely saying that you need to relax to some degree. That definitely is one part of the desired outcome for putting you through this. Now, you might be thinking, how am I supposed to relax when the truths outside of my comfort zone are so harsh? The thing is that you freaking out about it isn't going to help you maneuver through it. In fact, the calmer you are through this process, the better you have access to your faculties, your resources, and the better you are equipped to maneuver through this successfully. It's about remaining calm and cool and collected because, one, there's nothing to freak out about, and two, you have everything necessary to handle what's being thrown at you. Why am I saying that? Because you're being represented by the two majors. And now we come back to what I was saying there at the beginning, where you're being represented by these two majors and everything around you is minor. So you here as the Empress and also being represented by the shifted perspective of the Hanged Man. Meanwhile, what you're maintaining and engaging in is minor. It's smaller than you. You have outgrown these things that are a part of your past. You have outgrown that comfort zone that you refuse to leave to get what you claim to want. And so there's definitely this sense of you needing to calm the fuck down about the things that you're anxious about because, one, you're definitely overthinking some things, but also, two, you are definitely equipped to handle the things that you're scared of. Pink Diamond's Zoo. The thing about it is that it starts off as a prison. Eventually, it turns into a community. Those prisoners overthrow the authority there, and then they all just become a community there. So what is at one point something scary and hostile, something that you're trying to avoid whichever camp you're from. So if it's like this thing that you know you're not supposed to engage in, that, if it's the comfort zone you refuse to leave, that, you have the capacity to transmute those things into something that's of actual convenience to you, not convenient in the sake that it's just close to you, so that's what you're going to accept, but rather convenient in the sense that it's good for you. And Onion, kind of going back to how I was talking about how after that episode where the main character displays that courage and gains this character's trust and gains this friendship, and after that we're able to see this character in a new light, that's what that card is kind of giving me that energy of, where yeah, what you're going through is tough, and you know, maybe what's outside of your comfort zone, the truths that are waiting for you to address them, yeah, that is scary. It is a lot to handle, and it's meant to be. Not all facets of life are meant to be comfortable, again. But chill out, because you're here at a tarot reading, which means you believe in more than just what you can see. And if you can have faith in something like that, it means that you can to some degree believe that things are going to be okay. So chill out, because one, you have the capacity to successfully maneuver through this, but two, you also have your faith and what you have faith in to help you through these things. And it's being confirmed here by this last Onion card here that it is meant to be weird and tough and uncomfortable. But there are things to be gained by you demonstrating courage and following what you're being pulled towards and gaining new perspective, weird perspectives, and accepting what's there because you can handle what's there. You are being represented by Major. Everything around you, everything that you have to handle and process, everything that you're engaging in, minor. So you've outgrown it. You have everything within you to progress and elevate to something better, higher, healthier for you. So that is what why you were victimized, what happened, all of that. Before we get to the last part of advice that love has for you right now, let's just take a moment to, if you're part of Camp A, let's take a moment to acknowledge that you are acknowledging that something isn't right, that something you have thus far settled for is not enough for you. And that's tough. I know from personal experience. And so I want to take a moment to congratulate you for that and to tell you that only better things are coming if you are part of Camp B. Let's take a moment to acknowledge why it is that you have felt the need to stay in this comfort zone and maintain it. there's nothing wrong with having a comfort zone. There's nothing wrong with you wanting to maintain that. There's nothing wrong with you not wanting to get hurt. There's nothing wrong with you not reaching for love despite claiming to do so. But the truth of the matter is that you picked on a tarot reading and you're still here, which means that you are to some degree ready to engage with the things that are outside of your comfort zone. And that is what I want to take a second to acknowledge and congratulate. So just this quick moment where we're taking a break and a little breather to acknowledge that shit's tough, but we're tough too. Quick virtual hugs. Let me take a drink of water and we'll get to the last portion of this reading, which again is the advice that love has for you right now. Okay, I don't think I've ever given this as advice before, but regardless of which camp you belong to, this is going to be true. Like I've with the last two piles, I've gotten separate specific messages from these three cards, but with this pile, it's just one message meant for all of you. And it's that the advice is that in love and romance, you are better suited for something committed. And even if that's your polyamorous person, that's a commitment too. You already know that. I don't know why I needed to say that. But like the point being that, because I guess why I felt the need to clarify that is because I wanted to say what's better for you is something singular, but if you're polyamorous, that's not going to be true. And then I changed my wording. Anyways, the point is, letter is communication. Lily is purity, something concentrated. So just one thing. And ring in Lenormand is about like something long-standing, like a commitment, and it's usually depicted as a ring, like an engagement ring. But in this deck, it's depicted as like she's giving someone a ring, like a phone. So she's on the phone, she's giving someone a ring. There's communication. So although ring is about commitment and something long-standing, and that's where I'm getting that interpretation of, you're better suited for a commitment. The fact that letter is about communication and the ring card shows communication, and the center card is something like pure. There being the sense of you being suited for pure communication. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, you're keeping everything G graded and nothing sexual and just we can only hold hands. That could be true, but that's not what I'm getting from that purity aspect of Lily. It's more so just because Lily is that thing that you want to keep sacred and clean and that you treasure. And so you maintaining communication only with the things that you feel this way about. And so ring then being you committing yourself to this thing that like you definitely feel is worth committing to. And that's what you're better suited for. I don't think I've ever given that as advice because usually these love readings are about, trying to move away from something so committed and singular. But here we are. So if you're part of Camp A, where you have been engaging in something that you shouldn't have, maybe that's a demonstration of how you don't want to just go out and be with anybody. You've stuck to this person or these people because it's one within your comfort zone, but because you're just the type of person to not want to engage with strangers or with a lot of people. And so that's where this message comes in. We're like, okay, honor that. Find someone who is worth keeping that type of communication with and who engaging with doesn't make you feel like shit. And if it's part of you, where you're part of Camp B, where you've been afraid to leave your comfort zone to risk finding love, okay, honor that. It's not about you going out and dating and, casually dating, acknowledge that what you want is something committed and something with just one person, and you're not trying to date around, you just want to date one person. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the first person you date is going to be the person that you commit to, but rather some people, like what I'm getting at, what I'm getting from that message is that some people can date a whole bunch of people at once and they're comfortable doing that. And maybe you hearing that, it's like, oh, I can't do that, and I guess that means I can't date. Wrong. You can date just one person at a time, and that's what's being said. It's like, okay, date and honor. Just because you're dating doesn't mean that you have to change or go out of your comfort zone too much. There's a compromise to it where you're going out of your comfort zone, but not in a way where you feel endangered. You're doing it in a way that honors your emotional regulation and allows for you to do things in a way that, you know, doesn't leave you anxious or too vulnerable. And if that means engaging with just one person at a time, then that means just engaging with one person at a time. My friends, pile 3, I really hope that this helped. Godspeed. One last virtual hug before I sign off. I will catch you on the next one. Bye.